What's going on YouTube? So for today's video, what I wanted to talk about is five guests that I'd love to see at LegensCon 2. So these are five people that could be announced. We don't know yet. I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I know that they're still in the process of getting more people to come. They have 10 people announced, by the way. Um, already set for the con. But these are five more people that I'd love to see there. My number one is Drew Carpenter. Um, for a lot of reasons. He wrote my favorite Star Wars game, Knights of the Old Republic, which I've talked about in a previous video. He wrote, of course, the Bane trilogy. He's written short stories. He's written comics. He's done a lot of stuff for the expanded universe. Pretty much only in the Old Republic era. He's kind of like the father of the Old Republic in many ways. Um, he worked on SWTOR. He wrote a couple of novels outside of the Bane trilogy. Revan and Annihilation, I think. I looked at my shelf. Yeah, he wrote Annihilation and Revan. So clearly he's, the architect of the Old Republic era. Um, I also want to see him there because he lives in Austin, which is like 5 hours away from the con, 4 hours maybe. Um, so it's certainly very possible that he could be there. Now, I've been told by a few people that he's one of those now I don't know if this is true, so if I'm wrong, let me know, but I've heard that he's kind of had some beef with Lucasfilm. There's a collection of authors who Alan Foster, why am I forgetting his middle name? Um he's obviously the big one. He was forgetting his royalties. Alan Dean Foster? Why am I forgetting his name? Um So he wasn't getting paid his royalties and he spoke out about it. Well, there's a collection of authors, there's a handful of authors that have been treated the same way, but they weren't as bold as what Alan was, so they were never, you know, they didn't have the royalties and they kind of just want to stay away from Lucasfilm. That includes even going to conventions. They don't want to have nothing to do not only with just Lucasfilm, but with Star Wars as a whole. So it's not the fans, it's nothing that we've done, it's Disney. I don't think people realize, but Disney is a horrible company, not just because of the stories that they make, but because of the way they treat people. This is another example of that. Now, I've heard Drew Karpyshyn is among those people, but I'm not too sure. I hope he's not, only because I want him to go to LegendsCon. But if he is one of those authors, of course, I completely understand why, right? I think we could all understand. The second author that I'd like to see is Kathy Tyers. She wrote two novels within the expanded universe, Truce Bakura and Balance Point in the New Jedi Order. Truce Bakura is kind of like her main novel, is what people know her for, but she wrote it Balance Point in the NJO. Again, a wonderful, wonderful author. Um, I just don't see. I don't know if she's been to any. I'm sure she has, but um, I would hope to see her. This one, her books were just pretty important in their respective places in the continuity. So, and she's also did a bunch of short stories. She did a couple in the Star Wars Tales stuff with Kevin J. Anderson, and then she did. I think she even did some like Western game stuff. I'm not too sure because I don't have any of the Western game stuff. Unfortunately, I need to get some of that. But yeah, she would just be an author I'd love to meet and talk to and learn about, sort of what early Lucasfilm, early expanded universe, I should say, was like, and how they were really getting that stuff. Because she's, after Zahn's trilogy came out, it was her, Vaughn McIntyre, Kevin J. Anderson, Dave Wolverton, uh, and a few others. I think those are kind of the big ones, but they wrote some of the first couple of books to come out after the success of Zahn's novels, and I'd love to see her talk about it and talk about her experience writing Star Wars, working with Lucasfilm in those early days, right? Working with Zahn, right? Um, my number three spot, speaking of Zahn, would be Zahn. I'd love for Zahn to go. No, I kind of have my beef with Zahn. He doesn't know that, by the way. He doesn't care either, even if he did know. It's not that I have beef with him, there's just some things that he's done I don't necessarily like in terms of how he's been writing for the new canon. I guess I can't complain because money is money, but Zahn is another I think we'd all like to meet Zahn at least once. Of course, he wrote we all know what he's done, right? The Thrawn trilogy, Hand of Thrawn, bunch of other novels and comics. Um, he's kind of the guy who kind of kickstarted all this. He's sort of like the George Washington of the expanded universe. And he's obviously we all I mean, I don't think even I have to go into why one's on there. I think Zahn would be an incredible addition to the already packed list of guests that we have. Um, but I would I don't think he'd go, and the reason why is because Legends 2 is associated with movement, and I don't think Zahn would want to be associated with that. I don't know why. We're celebrating his stories too, but that's on for you. But it would be cool for him to go to see, to just, again to talk about what early Lucasfilm was like, sort of how we came up. I'd love to ask him how his conversation with George went because I know he had like a 15-20 minute conversation with George Lucas in the late 80s when he was sort of planning out his trilogy after Bantam had, of course, got the license to do Star Wars novels. I'd like to hear more about that. My fourth guess is song from number four, I think. Kenneth C. Flint. I think out of all these guests, I think he'd be the most special. Um, if you don't know who that is, I don't blame you for not knowing because he has not published any novels, unfortunately. Well, he was, but the we all know the novel Heart of the Jedi, which was supposed to be released in the early '90s, was supposed to be one of those first batch of books that Bantam was going to put out. But it was canceled because of some disagreements he had with Bantam. I was about to say Del Rey, not there yet. Some disagreements you have with Bantam, creative differences. I think creative differences. There was something that had happened between him and Bantam, and it caused the novel to be canceled. Now, the novel was all printed. It was in some of the final stages. Printed. It was all written. It was in the final stages. And then in 2015, Joe Barjona actually made contact with him because Matt Wilkins, he can attest to this. There was some marketing back in the day, back in the early '90s, for Heart of the Jedi, but it never came out, right? Matt has talked about how he had a bookmark that actually advertised Heart of the Jedi on it. But we never got that because obviously the book was canceled. So Joe contacted him in 2015 and he discovered the novel was fully written and Kenneth C. Flint happily gave Joe the manuscript. In fact, they edited it together to make sure that it would fit in the modern continuity. Um, for those of you that complain about Joe editing the book, he did it in collaboration with with Mr. Flint. So if you're gonna blame anybody, blame Kenneth C. Flint because I guarantee you, if Joe had not gotten permission to edit the book to make sure it fit in the modern continuity, he wouldn't have done it. He would have. You're acting like he did it without his permission. Um, and by the way, the edits that he's made were like tiny. I think there was a couple of like inserted references to because the book has a lot of shapeshifters in it. So he referenced Claudice from the prequels, the Clone Wars had I mentioned, and there was a planet that was the name was changed because it sounded too much like another planet. I mean, the references are very minute, and the not even that, it's the changes were minute. So, for pretty much the most part, we have the very same manuscript that we had back in the early '90s, just some small changes to make sure it fit in the overall continuity. Um, which again, Kenny C. Flint was all for. So either way, people need. I don't know why people still complain about that, but number 5, my last, author in fact, I do have a bonus one I'm gonna give at the end, but my last author that I think I would really like to see there is Greg Keyes. Greg Keyes wrote 3 books within the New Jedi Order, and that's all. He didn't write anything else. He may have written some short stories. Oh, he did write some short stories. He wrote, The Emissary of the Void, That was a short it was a six-part short story collection. The first 3 were released in Star Wars Gamer, but when Gamer got canceled, the rest of the series was it was finished in Star Wars Insider, and that story, follows Older during the New Jedi Order. If you don't remember who that is, he was the, wannabe Jedi from the Junior Jedi Knight series. In fact, all of his work that he has within the EU has a connection to Junior Jedi Knights one way or the other. Um, for example, the Edge of Victory duology focused on Anakin Solo. The Final Prophecy focused on Tahiri, and then his Emissary of the Void short stories series focused on Older. So very much clearly a big Junior Jedi Knight fan, as am I. So I loved his stories, but even then, his stories were written just amazingly. It was an amazing story. Everything he wrote was amazing. At least his novels. I've not read Emissary of the Void yet, but um, yeah, his novels were fantastic. I don't think they're some of my favorite books in not just in the Jedi Order, but the entire expanded universe. So they're wonderful books. My bonus one, Walter John Williams. I felt his he wrote only one story or one novel. He wrote a short story as well. He wrote a novel. Again, New Jedi Order. Lots of New Jedi Order. As you guys know, I love New Jedi Order. So, but Walter John Williams, that's another one I'd love to see. He wrote Destiny's Way, which is I kind of call it the Star by Star, but for the good guys. It was kind of like the first real turning point of the war. I'm not going to get into why it's like that, but the that book certainly served as the turning point for the rest of the war. Um, it was just a great book, and it has well, not really a lot of Junior Jedi Knight references. I was gonna say that, but Walter John Williams, he wanted to use Lyric from Lyric's World, the Junior Jedi Knight book, but something bad happened to her. I'm not gonna tell you what, but you can probably figure it out. But he couldn't use her, and he was kind of bummed out about that. From what I've heard. And then he wrote the short story Elysia, which takes place. Ooh, looking at my timeline. I don't. I think it takes place before Destiny's Way. I don't remember. After Destiny's Way. It's a short story talking about the Peace Brigade. I think it explained what happened to a certain character. I don't remember who. I know it's Peace Brigade. Peace Brigade. I think Jack and Sal Solo. I think it was. I don't remember. It explains what had happened to a previous character from the first books in the series. I think the Hutts play a role in it, obviously Ulysses, right? So, um, that short story was all right, but his novel was really good. So I'd love to see him too. Um, but yeah, that's 5, technically 6 authors that I really want to see at Legends Con. Um, the ones that I think have kind of a big chance of being there. I feel like uh, uh, Drew Carperson has a chance to be there, big chance, and Kathy Tyers has a big chance, and Kinsey Flint, but maybe not be Kathy Tyers, more so Kinsey Flint because he knows Joe. But um, the problem, and I've been told this by people working on the con, but I know they wanted to get Kristen Catherine Rush, I believe. I may be wrong on this, okay? So if I'm wrong, let me know. But I think they wanted to get her to come. She wrote the New Rebellion, but she politely declined because she's too old to travel. And that's kind of like one of the worst parts about this is a lot of these authors and people that we all want to see, either one, some of them are already gone, and two, they're just getting too old now to do stuff like that. And it's a real shame. I think Lucino is like that. I think he retired from going to conventions. I may be wrong again. I don't know all this for sure. This is just things I've heard, but it's certainly a really sad thing. Um, because a lot of these guys are Kirsten Catherine Rush. I'd love to meet her because first of all, I loved her book, and two, uh, I know she worked a lot with Kevin J. Anderson when writing that story because that story connects with Young Jedi Knights. So it's just one of those things that, I really wish we could happen. Other authors I think would be cool is Michael P. Q. McDowell and, what's his name? Roger McBride Allen. If I'm looking over here, I'm looking at my shelf. My shelf is right here. Um, so Roger McBride Allen, he did the Krellin trilogy, and Michael P. Q. McDowell did the Black Fleet Crisis. Again, 2 authors we don't really see much, or see talked about, to be honest. Um, but yeah, that is 5, kinda 6 authors that I really want to see the Legends Con 2. Thank you all for watching, and long live the expanded universe.